אני שומע מבני המשפחות של הנופלים אמיצי הלב, מאמצים רבים אחרים לא היו צולחים בלי הלחץ הצבאי.
They needed to bring them back as soon as possible because they don't have any time over there in the tunnels and their life are in danger.
מחר. תודה לך. תודה.
Now, Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly said that military operations in the Gaza Strip will not end anytime soon, despite the humanitarian catastrophe that is being witnessed there. But on the issue of the Israeli hostages that are held at this moment by Hamas, his lack of a defined strategy is drawing a lot of flak back home. And believe it or not, this is what happened inside of the parliament when Netanyahu was in fact addressing the Knesset. The family members of Israeli hostages held up signs in Hebrew that read, "What if it was your daughter?" or "What if it was your son?" More families held up photographs of their loved ones who are still in the custody of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and they heckled and interrupted the Prime Minister inside the parliament, chanting that hostages, that is the Israeli hostages in the custody of Hamas, should be brought back home immediately.
אומר לי, אותו הדבר, הגשש חלם וחברו עוז, חייבים להמשיך. ולכם המשפחות הדואבות וקרובי החטופים, אני אומר גם מעל הבמה הזאת, אנחנו לא עוצרים ולא נעצור עד לניצחון. כי אין לנו ארץ אחרת.
And to you, IDF fighters and grieving families and hostages relatives, I say from this stage as well, we are not stopping and we will not stop until victory, because we have no other country and we have no other way.
קחי אותו. תעבירי אותו.
Now, the demonstrations were not just about the hostages, but were also a jibe at Netanyahu himself. Interestingly, Netanyahu's son has not enlisted himself to fight in the IDF. Instead, Yair Netanyahu, the son of Benjamin Netanyahu, is at this moment in the United States, thousands of miles away from the battleground and his homeland at a time when Israel is at war. What is increasing the desperation of the families of the hostages is perhaps the realization of the growing gap between the current ground reality and the Israeli Prime Minister's aims. On Monday, an American daily published an op-ed by Netanyahu. It revealed Netanyahu's 3 prerequisites for peace with Gaza. So let's get you the fine print of what Netanyahu said in the op-ed. For peace to prevail between Israel and the Palestinian occupied territories across the country, this is what Netanyahu says in the op-ed, and I quote Netanyahu's article here. Hamas needs to be destroyed. Secondly, Gaza must be demilitarized. And thirdly, the Palestinian society must be, according to Netanyahu, de-radicalized. Now, in contrast to what the article says, let's also take a look as to what the ground reality is. First and foremost, the Israeli military has been bombarding Gaza relentlessly for over 10 long weeks now. And this is what Gaza Strip now resembles. An estimated 20,600 Palestinians have been killed so far. Thousands are said to be under the rubble still. And so far, Hamas has not been eliminated. Secondly, what does demilitarizing Gaza mean? For decades, both Gaza and the West Bank have witnessed hostilities owing to settlement occupation in the region. So if Gaza does not have any military forces of its own, how is a population of 2.3 million people supposed to defend themselves in times of conflict? Who guarantees the safety of the Gaza Strip? Lastly, half of Gaza's population is that of children, of which more than 8,000 have been killed in what the UNICEF has described as 10 weeks of hell for children. Now, according to the United Nations, at least about 1.8 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip have been uprooted from their homes and have been displaced. Only about 9 of the 36 hospitals barely remain functional in the Palestinian enclave. Hunger, disease and homelessness is rampant in the war-torn region. Given the ground reality of Gaza, what it needs urgently at the moment is humanitarian aid. In contrast to Netanyahu's reported objectives, this is what the situation at this moment looks like, and there appears to be literally no end yet to this war. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is happening at this moment of this war, we're being joined by Mr. Lev Aaron, who is an Israeli columnist and a journalist. He's joining us live from Haifa in Israel. Now, Mr. Aaron, let me in fact begin by asking you to weigh in on the images that we witnessed in the Israeli parliament, the Knesset. Netanyahu was giving his address to the Knesset, and we saw the family members chanting and asking questions of Netanyahu, who said, "What if it was your son?" at a time when Netanyahu's son is not even in Israel, at a time when Israel is in war. How do you read those images?
Good evening. I think Netanyahu's son is hated for 2 different reasons. One reason that he's not enlisted to the army while he's a young person, and in Israel we have a mandatory service. We all go to the army. The second reason is that he's considered to be like the mastermind and the proxy of Netanyahu himself about polarization and hate and horse trading and petty politicking. So in a way, he's even more hated than his father. And as to the hostages' family, yes, they do not believe that via the military operation we can bring the hostages back to Israel.
Now, at this moment, this war has gone on for almost about 80 days. The question that a lot of people are asking is, yes, Israel has got one of the strongest armies in the world. It says that it wants to destroy Hamas, but there are still more than 100 Israeli hostages in the custody of Hamas. Why has Netanyahu failed in getting the hostages back? Is it not a priority for him?
As far as, Henry Kissinger once said that Israel has no foreign policy, only domestic policy, okay? So as far as our Desi politics is concerned, Netanyahu cannot say that his priority is to win the war, and the hostages are right now less important. So what he prefers to say is that we can win the hostages as well as the war. Now, at the beginning, I think he was right. I think that in a way, we got many hostages back for a fairly low price as far as Hamas is concerned, because we won the war so decisively. But right now, when the war becomes very slow, very guerrilla-style war, I think many families do not believe that through the war in the tunnels, we can bring their daughters, sons, and relatives back.
And also, Mr. Aaron, how much longer do you think Netanyahu can, in fact, continue with the strategy that he has? Because the family members of the hostages want him to negotiate. They want the first priority for Netanyahu to bring back the hostages. How much longer can he actually not heed to the questions of the family members of the Israeli nationals who are at this moment in the custody of Hamas?
Unfortunately for the families and friends of the hostages, right now the consensus in Israel is that we have to win the war, although many Israelis know that winning the war means that many hostages will not come back. And we saw that 3 hostages were killed by our own soldiers. So I think now we know the price, but still Netanyahu knows that a majority among Israelis do not want to see the scenes of 7th of October again. And therefore, a victory over Hamas is more important for many Israelis than the hostages, unfortunately.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Lev Aaron, for joining us and getting us that perspective there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.